What's going on, everybody? Justin Nazario here at SoundSplitter Studio.
I'm Dan Nazario, brothers.
Yep. So we've been recording drums in our parents' basement, in my college apartments, in a house I lived in downtown, and now this house here, right outside of Philly in Alden. And pretty much recording drums in unideal situations. So we got some tips here we put together that'll make, if you're recording drums in a practice space or in your parents' basement, some tips that'll, make it a little bit easier and kind of get you a good sound. He's also got some tips.
Oh, yeah.
About drums in general.
Yeah, we'll probably later on in the video be breaking down just drums as an instrument themselves. Couple things to just like look at before you actually go into recording. Drum head choice, tuning specifically. And then, just like diagnosing some, maybe even like, some problems of if you're not getting your ideal sound. Some, quick little tips on like how you can get there.
Yeah, we'll talk about mics and mic placement and pretty much just anything you can do to save a little money and get a good recording.
Yeah, sit back, have fun. Let's do it.
Let's eat some popcorn.
Let's get into it.
We're back. No one gets that joke except for me, Dan. Yeah. And Doug, if you're watching.
Yeah. All right. We're peeking. We got to get back into it.
All right. So anyway, moving blankets. Let's talk blankets. You a blanket boy?
I'm a blanket boy.
Me too.
Night and day, blankets.
Yeah. I usually have a blanket.
Yeah.
Like when I'm sleeping?
Yeah. You got to have them.
Unless it's really hot. Anyway, in the basement, though, moving blankets are cheap. They're thick. You can staple them up on the walls. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them at Home Depot. But yeah. Down in my basement, as you can see here, I put up some along the wall in the back corner where Dan plays the drums, or if I have a band over, I usually set up the drums in this back corner. And then all over the ceiling in the basement down here, I stuffed it with mineral wool insulation, which was super cheap. I got it at Home Depot. Dan actually helped me put a bunch of that in the ceiling.
It's the itchiest thing ever. If it gets in your eyes, get used to it being and staying in your eyes.
Yeah, it was a good time. But and then I just covered it with black fabric and stapled it up. Eventually, maybe I'll trim it and put some nice wood up there or something. But anyway, it works great for deadening up the space down there. So I did one whole side kind of the basement with the moving blankets, and then on the other side, I left it kind of just the concrete walls. So that side you can put up some room mics far away from the drums and get kind of like a bigger kind of live drum room sound. So that's really nice to have kind of two sides of the studio, one being a little more lively, one being a little more dead. And then you can get a nice blended drum sound of like space, or if you want just a real tight closed mic sound, you can get a good sound down there with just, some, like I said, moving blankets, mineral wool insulation, and you get a lot done.
Yeah. And we did like during the whole process too. We had a session booked for like right before we did like put up like all the sound treatment and blankets. And then we had a session like probably the week after. I played drums on both of those sessions, and being down there before it was treated, you hear all of these reflections from like the drummer's perspective. And then after, it just felt way more controlled. And you can tell just from even walking down there, snapping your fingers or just like clapping, and having a controlled environment. It's just like, it's perfect when you're trying to get a decent drum sound.
I think that first session we did have the blankets taped up.
Oh, but no insulation.
No insulation. Yeah. But it definitely made a difference.
Yeah, so. Even just that stuff. A little bit goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
All right, and now we're talking drums. So typically what I do before I go into a session, whether it's, here at SoundSplitter, at a different studio, at a friend's house or anything, I always try to tune my drums the best I can. Tuning is often considered a science, an art. It is very frustrating at times, especially if you have a drum set that's not accepting the heads, or if you have old heads. I think I was using very old heads.
For this video, yeah.
Yeah, so I was doing coated Emperors, Remo Emperors on the top heads of all the drums, snare, tom, and then the bottom on the toms were, I believe they were clear Ambassadors. I usually do that for most sessions I do. And then, I think kick drum was Power Stroke 3, and then just the CNC stock head on it. But they were old heads. But I knew how to tune. I, just trusting your ear. And then I also cheat and use a little TuneBot device in the studio because it works. I think I tuned the different intervals from the top and bottom head, I think like a fourth apart, just so that the heads sing together, and you basically just want to dial in to the sweet spot of your drum. If you're a drummer and you've come across this video and you're like, hey, I've heard that before. Basically what that means is you want to tune to the specific register of your drum that, you know, your drum accepts. If you tune a drum too high, it'll sound choked out. If you tune it too low, it'll sound like a plastic bag. So you want to, you know, really...
For that real good plastic bag sound.
That
Come
sound
the sound
splitter plastic bag sound. No, I'm just kidding. But
All right, so for the mics for this, I did kind of my go-to drum mic technique, which is just measuring the overheads, doing a pair of overheads that are matched. So here I have a pair of Aston Starlights. They're both measured to be the same distance from the snare. Same with that center overhead, which is a ribbon mic. That's an RM6, which is like a build. It was like $350. You kind of build it, put it together. It's awesome. It's just a bi-directional ribbon mic. So that's overhead, and all three of those are measured to be the same distance from the snare to keep them in phase.
the center of the snare.
Center of the snare.
Very important.
Yeah. Kind of right where you're hitting it. But yeah, you can measure that with a ruler or tape measure, or just like a cable. Just put your hand on a cable and do 2 points.
Yeah. Put a 1/4-inch cable just right in the center of the snare.
Yeah.
Move it around.
So yeah, that's going to be overheads, and then we did 57 on the top and bottom of the snare, just kind of pointed at each other with the face flipped on the bottom. Then kick, we did a AKG D112 for the inside, and then on the outside, I have this MXL, just like cheap FET condenser that I just roll off a ton of high end and just boost some low sub, and that's just picking up the sub stuff. That's pretty much just because I don't have a sub kick, so I'm just using that for the sub stuff. Sometimes I'll delay that to kind of happen after the attack. That's like a little Eric Valentine trick I kind of learned. But yeah, that's it for the kick. And then on the toms, I got these EV clip-on mics to pick up the toms. And then we had a EV664 as the center of the kit mic, kind of pointed at the side of the snare, right over the center of the kit. Getting like some beater head of the kick as well. For room mics, I just used the Samson, cheap Samson mics that came with like my original Samson drum miking kit I got in high school, which is, they're just kind of like, I have them laying around. I think they're really bright, but I end up rolling off a lot of high end in them, and, they're easy to set up and they work fine.
If it works, it works.
Yeah. If that's all you have, it works. But I usually like to, if I had a pair of ribbon mics, I would probably put those up as room mics, but, All right, so we are here in Pro Tools now, so I'll show you what we did with this setup here. So we did a couple takes of different configurations. We did 2 configurations with 1 mic. We did a condenser on omnidirectional pattern, kind of shooting over the floor tom to the right of the drummer. And then we put a bidirectional ribbon mic in that same exact spot. So you'll hear those 2 side by side with just, the whole drum kit with just 1 mic. I did some parallel processing for each of those, some, reverb to give it some ambient space since you're only using 1 mic. And then I did some kind of saturation with a Studer tape machine and paralleled that. So that's just another, a little trick to kind of give it 1 mic some life. I also did some compression here that I kind of blended a little bit. It's mostly the compressed signal. Then this decapitator that I backed off quite a bit too, but just some more saturation, some more tape, just to give it some vibe. But anyway, you'll hear basically you can make 1 mic work pretty good in a mix here. I recorded just a little guitar diddly thing and some bass, and yeah, so I'll stop yapping, and here is the condenser mic. I think it sounds pretty good for one mic. So here you can hear see what it sounds like by itself. And here's without anything. That's just the mic. I'll bring it up. It definitely needs some work. But after, after all this. Sounds pretty good. So here, I'll show you what the ribbon mic, same spot, sounds like. So yeah, definitely a different vibe there, with some more low end, a little kind of punchier. I think me and Dan like the condenser mic a little better for that comparison, but by itself, I'll show you. So yeah, pretty cool. It's just same thing, a little bit of reverb and a little bit of saturation, and you get a pretty awesome drum sound. All right, so now that we showed you one mic, so say you saved up and you got a couple more mics, you got an interface now, maybe you have a 4-channel interface. We'll show you what it sounds like with 4 mics on the drums. So we're just going to do a kick drum, a snare drum mic, and a pair of overheads. So it's just a D112 on the kick, 57 on the top of the snare, and then a pair of the Aston Starlights as the overhead. So here's what just 4 mics on the drums is going to sound like. So yeah, pretty cool. So now that we went from 1 mic to 4, you definitely get more kick and snare. I feel like the toms don't really come out that great in these overheads, so I maybe would have messed with the placement, or you can do some parallel compression or some just overall compression on the overheads, and that would definitely help bring that out. So all right, so that was 4 mics. Say you saved up, you got 2 more mics. You saved up and you bought a pair used like clip-on drum mics. So we added rack tom and a floor tom mic. Let's see what that sounds like. So this is going to be six mics on the drums. So yeah, definitely get more the toms there, which is awesome. So yeah, if you have an 8-channel interface, you can do 2 more here. So we'll do another kick on the outside. We'll do another snare bottom, and you can mess around with. Maybe you don't need those. Maybe you want to do more room mics. You can try some room mics instead. But we'll just see what 2 kick and 2 snares sound like here. So this is 8 mics on the drums. So yeah, adds a little more fullness to the kick and the snare. So yeah, let's get rid of those kick and snares, and we'll see, like, instead we'll do a pair of room mics for the 8. So here's 8 with room mics instead. So yeah, I mean, that's 8 mics on the drums. Pretty raw. I mean, there's a little bit of bus compression, smidge EQ. But yeah, from there, I feel like you can get a pretty awesome drum sound going. So that's 8. Say you upgraded your interface, or you daisy chained 2 together, or whatever. You got 16 inputs now, or whatever. So let's say you can set up 12 mics on the drums, and you got a guitar going and the bass going, and you're using all those inputs. So let's see what 12 mics here on the drum sounds like. So yeah, sounds pretty awesome. So yeah, that was with the bidirectional ribbon mic in the center as a center overhead, and then we had a EV664 as the center of the kit mic, kind of pointed at the side of the snare, right over the center of the kit, getting like some beater head of the kick as well. And then we had a pair of just Samson CO2s, I think, or CO1s or something, the little pencil condensers, way far, pointed away from the drum set, far away in the basement. So yeah, I think it sounds pretty great. This is just a 12 mic setup. If you have the inputs, this is something pretty good starting point. You can mute some of these if you don't want to use them. You can, during a break in a song, if you want to just use one of these fun, mono mics or something. But I think it's a pretty good sound for an unfinished basement. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you learned a little trick or something about recording some drums at home, and maybe you can get some killer drum sounds with your setup at home as well. Happy recording.